had KD and Kyrie,
Crying.
they would have no chance against the Celtics.
We own that.
But I'm looking at Jaylen Brown and his inability to go left and thinking that could be a deterrent and the reason why the Nets win this series. Jaylen Brown just got paid a while ago, 5 years, $304 million extension. As a Celtics fan, how do you feel that Jaylen Brown in the final year of Supermax will get $69 million and the Celtics starting five of KG, Rondo, Allen, Pierce, and Kedrick Perkins back in 2009 earned $62 million combined?
You're going to be talking about it's going to be 2029 we're paying him that? What year is it going to be, bro?
28, 29.
Yeah. Listen, first of all, the way you worded this question on the show doc, at least, how will this contract age? Fucked up, because we know how it's going to age.
Could be good or bad.
It's going to age perfectly fine.
Players are going to get paid, right?
And that's going to save you.
I know, because we've seen this, right? We've seen it with Mike Conley back in the day. Like we've seen player after player that gets paid once you see that spike, and it doesn't work out. But the Celtics didn't have another choice than to pay Jaylen Brown, right? Like there's no other player they would have been able to trade for to replace what Jaylen Brown can do. And I get it. The last playoff series was terrible. Miami, especially that Game 7.
Last two endings.
JT, yeah, but in the finals, I'm not
just talking about
him.
Against Miami.
Oh, okay, yeah, but specifically this last one, I mean, 8-9 turnovers in that Game 7. JT twists his ankle. We're leaning on Jaylen now to take over offensively. He's not able to do it. He really just looks lost out there. But a lot of people are gonna look at that series and overreact to it. Before that series, going into this year, this past year, I should say, Jaylen Brown was a consensus top 20 player. Jaylen Brown was just the best player in the finals for us. Now, given that's because Jason Tatum played terrible, but Jaylen Brown was consensus top 20 player in the NBA, and he followed up with his best regular season of his career, averaging 26.5, putting up 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists on good efficiency. So I don't want to take that small sample size against Miami, who you got to give him credit for. We talked about it going in. If Miami wins this series, it's because Spo is going to put on a masterclass, and that's what he did, trapping him, forcing him to go left. But I'm not going to take that small sample over what Jaylen Brown, his improvement year after year, what he showed me in the playoffs and 2 years ago when we went to the finals. I'm going to take all of that sample size over this small sample size against Miami. He's still, to me, a top 20 player. He's still, to me, one of the best Robins in the league. Of course, his contract makes it look like he should be the best player in the league, but come back to this contract in 2 years. He'll be the 10th or 12th highest paid player, and we won't be looking at it like this insane overpay.
I'm just watching these turnovers again. He really can't go left.
You're a bastard.
This shit is hilarious, dog.
You're a bastard.
Oh,
well,
man.
two questions. Number one, how do you feel about this contract if this money was on the table last year after the NBA Finals?
I think a lot of people look at it differently because he was just able to not lead us to the finals, but at least in the finals, he looked like the best player on our team.
Right. And with that being said, the whole logic of him not being able to go left, I think that's a mental thing because Jaylen Brown obviously works on his handle, but the way it looks really amateur, right? So because it looks amateur and it's right now on the biggest stage as opposed to in January when he is going left and shooting pull-up shots and shooting pull-ups in the mid-range and knocking it down, it's not really that glorified. He's running past the basketball in the playoffs and they're losing. So of course it looks bad. I think it's a mental thing more than it is anything with him. But what I don't want to do, Joe, is I don't want to look at Jaylen Brown more than I want to look at what the Celtics are trying to build. And this guy is a part of what they're trying to build. They look like that window for them to win the NBA championship is right there. And they want to hold on to these two guys, in both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who are 25 and 26 years old. If Jaylen Brown is 27, he just turned 27. But I think he's 26.
Yeah, he turns 27 in October.
I think they want to hold on to these two young guys and continue to build around them. And if you're going to be able to pay Jaylen Brown, I want to make sure that we remember this, which is one of the most important parts of this. If you can pay Jaylen Brown $300 million, what do you think the Boston Celtics making?
Oh, my God. At least 4 or 5?
I mean, yeah, the value of the Celtics is going to be north
that
of
Tatum
$5
bag
billion.
going to be nuts.
And on top of that, Rib, and on top of that, Rib, there's a reason why, and it's ironic and coincidental. It's coincidental that it's the Celtics having this because who came up with the Larry Bird rule? That was that was Red Auerbach. So we can pay our players the most and not suffer the salary cap. So you figure this deal next year, the first year of this deal, I believe it's for almost $48 million. That's right around a third of what the salary cap is going to be next season, which means they don't go over the cap. So they still there, and they're going to do the same thing the next year with Jason Tatum. So they smart. They're not just giving this guy money and going well over the cap. No, they know exactly what they're doing with this guy.
So before I start, I have a question for the panel. Maybe you guys can enlighten me. Now, does the Supermax contract only work if you are an all-NBA player the season that you're due for the contract?
The season you're eligible for an extension.
Okay, so that's the main reason, the only reason why Jaylen Brown was eligible for this contract. Now, I say this with the idea that we've seen a player that is not the consensus number 1 or top 10 player in the NBA become the highest paid player in NBA history, and I'm talking about Mike Conley. He held that title for 1 season. 1 year that a guy, very obscure name, was number 1. Not that Mike Conley was bad at basketball by any means, and he was a great basketball player. He's still around to this day. He's still effective to NBA roster. Exactly, and I know how you feel about those Minnesota Timberwolves. But again, the very next year we saw him replaced. Now here we have Jaylen Brown, who in many's opinion is not a top 10 player, nowhere near the number 1 in the world conversation. For 1 season, he could potentially hold that, depending on what happens with Pascal. And you go 2 seasons removed from that, it is almost a foregone conclusion that he will not be the number 1 player, the number 1 highest paid player in the NBA, with the idea that Anthony Davis will be up for a contract. Depending how Murray's trajectory continues to be, Murray as well, Brandon Ingram, Paul George will be up for a contract. Yet right now when we talk about it, we could say, oh, this is going to age so poorly. How can you make Jaylen Brown, of all players, the highest paid player in NBA history? When, of course, he's coming off an all-NBA season. All that Jaylen Brown has done up until this point is get better and better. The last that we've seen from Jaylen Brown is completely fogging our vision. But before that, before the ECF, which of course it matters the most because what you did for us lately is what everyone judges you off of. But the last 2 rounds prior to that, he was averaging 25 points per game, 54% from the field, 47% from 3. Jaylen Brown was unbelievable. But of course, he was not great by any means against Miami. And what are we scrutinizing? What he needs to get better at, which is obvious. I'm not saying that he doesn't need to improve. He needs to improve his ball handle. He needs to practice continuing going left. He needs to practice on moving the ball with his head up and seeing other players in transition, seeing other players in the half-court setting, becoming a playmaker. These are things that he can and will work on. These are things that are fixable. But
so
again,
Drew, to answer your question about the Supermax, so entering year 8, 9, or 10 in your rookie contract with the team, that's yes. Jaylen Brown. I believe he just finished year 7.
Correct.
He's going into year 8. You have to have won an MVP in the past 3 seasons. He didn't do that. Mm-hmm. Defensive Player of the Year in any of the last 2 seasons. He didn't do that.
Nope.
Made an All-NBA team in the most recent or prior 2 seasons. Well, he did do that.
Prior to.
And I thought that this season, because you just mentioned about what he had done in terms of having a career year, I personally thought that he was a first-team All-NBA performer. And the reason why I felt like that was because I looked at the numbers and I'm thinking to myself, there was only 7 other guys that had first-team All-NBA performers as the second guy that averaged 26 a game and 7 rebounds. And Jaylen Brown is one of those guys, yet he didn't make first-team All-NBA. So before the playoffs started, he was a bona fide top 20 player in the game. That was not a question.
Absolutely.
But the fact that what he had done in the playoffs this season that just passed has clouded our vision to, is this guy really this good? Well, wait a minute. Yes, he is. He just had a mishap. I mean, I know you're a Boston Celtic guy. I don't mean you, Drew, but I know you're a Boston Celtic guy. But did that, with Jason Tatum rolling his ankle, did that not take the air out of you guys?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's the start of the game. What were we, 5 seconds into game 7, he rolls the ankle?
Because if I'm going to be honest with you, what it reminded me of 2006 with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati came in that stadium to kick Pittsburgh's ass that day. But Carson Palmer tore his knee up. If Carson Palmer doesn't tear his knee up, they're kicking Pittsburgh's ass. Same thing happened, I believe, against the Boston Celtics in Miami. They were ready for the Miami Heat. Miami had every opportunity to bury them and to let them back in the series and be down 3-0 and to let them back in the series. And now we got game 7 and we won the last 3 games and all the momentum. Boston came in that arena that night ready to kick Miami's ass. That ankle injury, basically, it eliminated all of that because everything now turns into something that they didn't go over.
I remember back in 2019, Jaylen Brown got a 4-year, $115 million contract extension, and everybody thought it was an overpay at the time. 8 years ago, the NBA salary cap was $70 million. Right now, the salary cap is $136 million. The projections are that it's going to grow 10% every year, which means that in 28-29, when Jaylen Brown is making $69 million annually, the cap is going to be projected around $219 million. Which is less than 35% of the salary cap. Now, Jason Tatum, when he gets Supermax, he's going to get 35% of the cap like he should because he's a star player. The only concern I have with this contract is we see what happens when teams pay top-heavy, like they pay their stars. They become very top-heavy. And it's not just Jaylen Brown and Tatum. It's Porzingis getting extended 2 years, $60 million.
That was a good deal.
I thought it was too. It was a good bargain. It's Derek White eligible to a 3-year, $85 million extension after the 25-26 season, during that season. And then Tatum's going to get a Supermax as well. But I think that Brad Stevens is one of the brightest minds in basketball, one of the best executives in basketball. And he's already finding solutions for a problem that might exist years from now. He stockpiled a bunch of draft picks from this past draft by moving back from the 25th pick to go selecting Jordan Walsh in the second round. In 2024, the Celtics have 5 picks, 2 in the first round, 3 in the second round.
Yeah, your pick, buddy.
And picks are becoming more valuable than ever. So for me, I think while this is a problem, Brad Stevens has the ammunition to continue stockpiling young players on this Celtics team. So they're always going to have a deep rotation around Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
For sure.
I think this contract is going to age just fine. I think from an annual salary perspective, people are going crazy right now. But given how much the NBA is growing, 10% each year, that's the projection. That's a lot of money. I think years from now, 28, 29, we're going to look at this contract, and it's just going to be a normal contract for an all-NBA level performer.
It's like, what has he shown you that the floor
Don't
is?
get disrespectful.
What's the floor, Riv? Talk to me.
He disrespects all NBA performance. He disrespected
I
Domantas
know.
Sabonis.
We know what the floor of this duo
That's
is.
because Kevin Looney fucking outplayed his bum ass.
Domantas Sabonis?
Yes.
I'll tell you what, man. That Kevon Looney, would you rather? Have you gone back and watch it?
Cook?
Haven't.
No, you did not cook.
Anyways, Jaylen Brown. I'm not gonna get too disrespectful. What else did you have to do? What else could you have done in the moment? Paying Jaylen Brown really was the only, like, there wasn't gonna be another. You guys didn't want Kevin Durant. You didn't want to mess up the timeline. I don't think you guys really wanted to get into the Dame sweepstakes. Once again, you didn't want to mess up the timeline. Paying Jaylen Brown was probably the only option you could have done at that right moment. And once again, you guys are always so close to winning a championship. I mean, whether it's the ECF, the finals, ECF again, you guys are always right there. I don't think not paying him would have been smart, or letting him walk would have been smart. I think Jaylen Brown is probably a good number 2. I think the better question is, how much better can he get from this point on? I think that's what you have to think about. It's not even about, like, the contract is big. He's going to be the 10th highest paid player in a year or two, then probably go up to like the 20th. That's fine. But will he live up to this contract for the next year and the year after that and the year after? Like, how much better can he get from this? Because it's not just the handles. I know we keep talking about the handles, but his 3-point percentage has dropped. He's not a consistent defender. The defensive consistency.
47% in the first 2 rounds from 3.
No, I'm talking about in the regular season. Okay. Sorry, regular season.
You're a playoff guy, that's why.
Yeah, I understand.
Things change.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the defense consistency is not there. The off-ball work is not there. The handle has got to get better. The playmaking. Like, there's more things that he has to work on. And he's still only 26, going to be 27 in October. He's still very young. He still has, he's entering his prime right now. So you have to look at it and, like, all right, we paid this guy. How much can he get better to where he can complement Tatum? Because Jaylen Brown's gotten better, but Tatum is the one has really improved every single year. Jaylen Brown has made modest improvements in his scoring, but he's decreased a little bit in other areas. You want to kind of see him do what Tatum has done, and that's get better in every area and keep that consistency at that level while getting better everywhere else. And I think that's the main thing with Jaylen Brown. Next year, like against Miami, they just exposed a lot of his weaknesses, and Miami was the best team to do it. Even last year against Victor Oladipo was the guy getting steal. Like, he played well, but the turnovers and the handles was a little bit of a concern. But y'all won, so it wasn't a big deal. I think Miami's just one of them few teams that really exposed Jaylen Brown's weaknesses. One of his kryptonites. Every player has that one kryptonite team that just makes him angry, does a lot of the dumb shit. So for Jaylen Brown, it's really just about improving and getting better because he has the ability to be higher than what he is and be much better than what he is. He has to just continue to grow his game, improve his game, and be that perfect complementary piece next to Jason Tatum. And with the new CBA, you don't know what's going to happen. So you have to kind of be improving your game every year at a high level to even get back to that point because teams are getting better in the East. There's teams, you just seen the Miami Heat team, that was the AFC, beat you guys. So it's all about improving for Jaylen Brown. I'm not going to get too rude on the guy, but it's, it's for sure just all about improving. And he's 27. He's going to be 27. So you're entering your prime. You have a lot of time. Work on your game, and you should be all right.
Well, two things, Drew, really quick before, because I know you're about to say something. I got a question for you, Riv. If you had a guy at 26 years old who in the last 3 years gave you, on average, shooting the long ball in the regular season, he shot it at about 36%.
Did you just lie to me about his three-point percentage in the playoffs?
Right.
Looking at
in the regular season, he shot it about 36%, and his field goal percentage in the regular season was around 48% in the regular season. And in the playoffs, it was around the same thing. And you're getting 25, 26 a game from this guy as your number 2, who does rebound. He might not be an elite defender, but he's better than average, right? And your other player is better than him, and this is what you're getting from him. Would you take that?
He's talking to you, Riv.
I know. I'm thinking like, I guess. Yeah.
I don't. What's the hesitancy?
What was the question?
It's more so what is wrong with Jaylen Brown in the sense
What
of
is
why
wrong
why
with
would
Jaylen
you
Brown?
not?
He has the
question
what he offers you.
It's about cleaning up the
What's
mistakes.
the question?
It's the question that I'm having for you, Riv, is if that's what you're going to get, like what you saw, let's just say for the sake of argument, what you saw from Jaylen Brown, let's say you get that for the next 6-7 years. Are you comfortable with that?
If I'm Boston,
26 and 7, 47%, 36% on the long ball in the playoffs. Are you comfortable with that?
No, that's great. That's all NBA numbers.
You're looking at the numbers, and listen. You're looking at the numbers, and the numbers is
Are you
fine.
fine with paying Donovan Mitchell this money?
$60 million if he's my number one?
Yeah,
because if Jaylen Brown was in the same situation as Donovan Mitchell, the hesitancy would be bigger than what I don't think I'd be comfortable paying Donovan Mitchell. But Donovan Mitchell doesn't have the same deficiencies as Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown has more deficiencies than Donovan Mitchell, but Jaylen Brown get hidden more because Jason Tatum's his number one. Donovan Mitchell's the number one on his team, so it's a different outlook.
I also think that if Donovan had a little bit more help on the offensive side of the ball, that his deficiency would not matter that much more.
You talk about Donovan?
I'm talking Donovan, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean if Garland was Garland the entire regular season we saw him in the playoffs, I think it's fine because we're not scrutinizing Donovan for losing and getting outplayed by Brunson. No, his offensive game becomes a little bit easier because now he has someone that he can rely on. Garland going ghost is what made the Cavaliers struggle as much as they did.
Yeah, but Donovan
I'm
wasn't
paying
that good
Donovan. Well, yes,
Donovan
but
wasn't that good
again,
either.
but Donovan was at least he wasn't Donovan that we saw in the regular season. He was just like maybe let's say he was at an A in the regular season. He was at like a B+. Where Garland was at like an A- in the regular season, and he was at a C. That's the difference.
I can level with you.
I mean, dude, Donovan Mitchell was just All-NBA player. Of course, he was an A.
I can level with you there.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of devaluing players off of a small game sample size. Jaylen Brown was amazing in the first 2 rounds, and in the Eastern Conference Finals, that's where you can nitpick his deficiencies. But this is the thing. When a player has deficiencies, sometimes they are hidden because you have the talent around him to mask it. If the Celtics had a true floor general point guard, we're not talking about Jaylen Brown needing to take this type of playmaking
Jaylen
leap.
Brown's deficiencies are not because he doesn't have a point guard. Jaylen Brown's deficiencies because he doesn't look up. Jaylen Brown's deficiencies because he can't go left. It has nothing to do.
Brown
I'm not. You're missing what I'm saying.
Yes, he can go left. He's an NBA player. He could go left. I've seen him go left.
You're misinterpreting what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Jaylen Brown has these deficiencies. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying Jaylen Brown has these deficiencies because he doesn't have a point guard. I'm saying that because Jaylen Brown has to have playmaking responsibilities often in the Celtics offense, those weaknesses are going to be more evident than if you actually had a point guard that can take that responsibility.
But is that not what you require from your number 2 wing on a team?
Not always.
Not all the time.
Really?
Nope.
Am I wrong for requiring a for requiring my number 2 wing on the team to have some type of playmaking?
You should want that to improve, and I think that's an expectation you should have.
For sure.
But for the Clippers, when Kawhi and Paul George, when their playmaking was subpar, the Clippers went and they tried to find point guard options multiple times.
But that's never really hindered them from winning in a
this
playoff series.
This hasn't hindered the Celtics from winning. The
Jaylen
minimum
Brown's playmaking just hindered them in the
in the ECF one series. We have a 5-year sample size that the floor is the ECF. The Clippers, that's not the Clippers floor. We know what the Clippers floor is.
Nuts to say that. Like what you just said is not, one more time, because I think people that went right over people's head. What is your floor in the last 5 years?
ECF for sure.
That is nuts to say that. And we sitting here talking about Jaylen Brown.
If you keep going to the ECF and you don't win, it becomes if you start to think about like, all right, we have the same group. We keep going to the same place, and it keeps being the same exact problem while we're losing.
The Celtics also,
it's not the exact same problem.
They screwed
for the most part, it's been the
That's
same
not
problem.
true, because they lost to the Golden State Warriors because Tatum wasn't Tatum. They lost to Miami because Jaylen Brown wasn't Jaylen Brown, and also Tatum got hurt in Game 7.
If Tatum doesn't roll his ankle, they mopped the Heat.
And also the Celtics were
by the
winning
way,
so
don't
early
leave
on.
out the fact that the year before that, they beat Miami.
That's what exactly.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
and it wasn't the bubble.
No, that wasn't the bubble.
It was
in the bubble, Miami beat
Miami
Boston.
beat Boston.
But the Celtics have been winning for so long. Like, they were winning when Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were like 23, 24. We don't see that in the NBA.
Yeah, it's a rare thing.
This age now is typically when we see stars go to the finals. So I understand when people say, if you keep going to the ECF and losing, that's a problem. My rebuttal is always, how many guys that are 23 and 24 are consistently going to the conference finals? That list is very
with different
small.
Coaches. Too.
Different coaches every single year.
Brad Stevens, Ime, and Mazzulla.
It's definitely a rare thing for sure. But at some, I said pay Jaylen Brown, but at some point you have to look at it and be like, well, how many times are we going to keep getting this far and not getting it done?
I think that's what the Porzingis trade's for. I think we know Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum work. So sprinkle in the other things that maybe aren't working great. I think Marcus Smart was our best playmaker, second best to Tatum. But now you get Porzingis, you get a big who could open up your offense a little bit differently. And I think the Celtics really see this as a 2-year window to win. The Celtics don't win a championship in 2 years. I do think Jaylen Brown gets moved.
Yeah, but now you still don't have a playmaking point guard.
Yeah, of course.
So now once again, you're asking Jaylen Brown to be some sort of a playmaker.
We also have extra first-round picks. We have a bowl of second-round picks.
What we're talking about just as a team right now.
Correct.
What it is.
Correct.
You're still going to ask.
We're asking Derek White to be our point guard.
Respect to Derek White. He made all defense. He respected him.
He's just not a great playmaker.
But you're asking Jaylen Brown once again.
Don't y'all still have Malcolm?
To be Malcolm Brogdon. He's probably going to come off the bench. For sure.
The thing, though, is I feel like what Jaylen Brown does well already and does on an elite level already warrants him getting what he just got.
He has to
improve despite the deficiencies.
He will improve.
He has to improve, but I think even where he is right now, if the Celtics can click for one playoff run, they can win a championship with this talent.
They can.
Yeah, for sure they can.
Maybe 2 games away against the Warriors.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page, that it's not been the same thing. This is the first time we've seen Jaylen Brown kind of, quote-unquote, exposed for his deficiency. Because this conversation this time last year was
Victor Oladipo exposed the same problem.
This time last year, the conversation was Jaylen Brown was just the Celtics' best performer in the finals.
Draymond Green exposed the same problem games 4, 5, and 6.
Even still with that, what do you mean?
Against Miami, Victor Oladipo exposed the same problems Miami did. Against the Warriors, Draymond Green exposed these same problems in game 4, 5, and 6.
But of who? With Jaylen Brown?
Yes, it was the same exact problem.
But again,
once Draymond got put on Jaylen Brown,
it was the same.
Understandable. But then that's when Jason Tatum should have taken the call.
But the reason why the reason why it wasn't as big as it was last year, like I told Dehls, because Boston won. So it's like it's not going to be a big deal if Boston won. They beat Miami, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
There was conversation that Jaylen Brown should have been the Larry Bird MVP. That's how good he was against Miami.
For sure, but the deficiencies were still there.
Yeah, but they were still
winning.
They won. It doesn't matter.
That's my point.
Okay.
But now that they lost,
what is your point? Because now I'm getting lost.
Because you said the deficiencies weren't the same, but they were. It's just the difference is they lost. They won last year.
But you're saying that they lost because of that deficiency. That isn't true.
No. I'm saying the deficiencies are still the same. It's just that Boston won last year.
You're saying that they lost because of it. That's the same. That's not
Game
true.
7 they lost because of Jaylen Brown's deficiency for sure.
Okay, I said that. This year was Jaylen. Last year was not.
Rivers just saying that last year the same problems existed.
Yeah, we know.
And versus the Warriors, it did too. It's just Jason Tatum struggled far more. And
Jaylen was also very efficient.
Yeah, Jason
he was
Tatum
consistent for what
not
Jaylen
good
is.
at all last
Yeah,
year.
it was Tatum's fault that Boston didn't seize the moment.
Hate to see it.
Well, the question, Riv, is are these deficiencies enough? Are they glaring enough that they can overcome them? Well, they've obviously been able to do it because last season, not this season that just passed, but last year, they made it to the NBA Finals with these deficiencies. This year, they were in the Eastern Conference Championship with these deficiencies. So now the argument can be made, well, they're going backwards. Well, how far are they going backwards? Well, we're going to see this year if this doesn't improve. Now, when I say improve, Riv, I don't mean that he's got to have a Kyrie Irving handle.
Sure.
He's got to have a Kenny Anderson handle. Now, I'm not going to go that far. But what it can't look like is it can't look amateur, which is what it does look like. Him running past the basketball, him tripping over the ball, things like that. And I think that that's a mental thing more than it is anything. Yeah, because he obviously works on it, because I don't think he's the same ball handler today that he was in 2018.
Sure.
I don't think he's the same ball handler today that he was in 2020 when he was in the bubble. I mean, I think that those deficiencies are still there, but they aren't as glaring 5 years ago.